And welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikin, and I am here in the beautiful Boulder Creek Free State of California. You know what goes on here, you know what we do. I am here to take a spiked bat to the narrative, and joining me bright and early this morning for me, middle of the day for him, is one of my more favorite content creators in the last several months. And I don't say that lightly. I do believe that there are people that do decent work and there are people who get caught up in the horse race. This gentleman is one of those who does not get caught up in the horse race and is here to speak truth to power. Welcome to the show, Gordon Dimmack, all the way from the UK. Gordon, good morning, man. How are you?
I'm very well, Steve. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I know it's very early over there, so I appreciate the time that you've got up to do this to accommodate me.
I was telling you, I guess off camera, as it were, but yeah, I've been my happy ass has been getting dragged out of bed at around 5 o'clock in the morning since I was a high school student. I will I will never get to be one of those people that sleeps in. Certainly not at this point in my life. Now that I'm over 40, from what I understand, I only lose sleep from here on out. So fuck it. Let's chop it up and make hay out of the day while it's early.
Absolutely. I've only just started getting up early over the last probably year or so since I've been doing this, and um, yeah, I wish I'd have done it 20 years ago, to be quite honest.
Um, we I tried to get in touch with you last night, but it was late notice. You put out a clip, I think it was yesterday, simply titled "I am Julian Assange," and I wanted to use it on the Free Assange Vigil last night. We'll use it next Wednesday. Um, but for those who haven't seen it, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes, why don't you kind of just give your presentation on why you or I or the collective we are in fact Julian Assange?
Well, wow, where do I begin? I mean, for me, it's a personal, it's a personal issue for me, but it really should be for anybody. Julian Assange wrote to me from Belmarsh Prison. I was obviously, when I started doing this about 18 months ago, I became, well, I suppose since 2016, when sort of really became interested in politics and the world around me. That's when I started realizing just how persecuted Julian Assange is. I've said it before. I was at the Imperialism on Trial in London a few months ago, and the great Chris Hedges was there, and he said that Julian Assange is not being persecuted for his vices; he's being persecuted for his virtues. And that summed up to me, because Chris Hedges, the brilliant wordsmith he is, that summed up to me why I feel so strongly about him. This is a man who has never, ever, ever, from what I can tell, told us a lie. He is the greatest publisher the world has ever seen. If you understand that WikiLeaks have published over 1 million documents on average per year in hundreds of countries all around the world. He's literally brought down governments with the state of the corruption that his documents have shown. And they've only been going since what, 2006? They have produced more bombshell stories in the last 12 years of their inception than the entire global media combined in the last 50.
And that's not even hyperbole. That's not a stretch by any means. You're not even massaging the truth
statement. It's factual, yeah. And they are given a red NewsGuard rating as untrustworthy. Do you know why? Because they have never had to retract anything. They are 100% accurate, and NewsGuard give them a red rating. And then you've got outlets over here, supposed progressive outlets, chasing their green NewsGuard rating like dogs after a car. It's honestly pathetic to see what the news media over in this country, and I know in America as well, has become. They are nothing but lackeys to the establishment. They are PR to the national security state. That's all they are right now.
Well, and some of them, it turns out, are in the employ of the national security state, are working on behalf of the national security state to put forth disinformation, to smear the character of whistleblowers, and to present a face of the state, as it were, as the only competent guardian for the masses, as it were. And the way that we've gone from the release of the book 1984 to becoming it and then surpassing it, it just, the trajectory has been done so quickly in just a couple of decades, from manufacturing consent to consent has been manufactured. Now we manufacture confusion and trying to unwind yourself from that confusion and find media outlets who are going to tell you the truth, not just about Julian Assange, but about news in general, or about the situation in the UK in general. You're one of the few people that delivers competent information on Brexit. You're the only reason I know anything about Brexit.
Let me, you say there how they're manufacturing consent. Let me give you an idea. Let me give you an example, because I was thinking about this before I came on. What could I try and, tell you a factual story about something that's going on, just to show exactly how our media over here manufacture consent, okay, and are active in a disinformation campaign on their own people. Like I said in that I Am Julian Assange video, I believe that's treasonous. They are gaslighting their own people, making them feel like they're going crazy because they know a truth that the government is telling them is lies. Let me give you an example. All right, I am doing this from my council flat in the middle of the Midlands on a budget of less than £1,000 a week. And I am telling more truth, I think, than the media entire in our country, especially with regards to certain subjects. With regards to Julian Assange, definitely. If you want the facts, don't go to the Guardian about it. They're just going to gaslight you and ask you whether Julian Assange is a rapist or not. It's pathetic. It really is, the way they try and control the narrative. I'll give you an example of how they do it. I do this from my council flat, and I do it because, you know what, I'm trying to get the truth out there. I haven't got people banging down my door to give me money. I haven't. I have to beg for money from people. I have to beg $2 a month, whatever it is, just to try and keep the wolf from the door and keep my rent paid. However, there is a man, I'm not kidding you, Steve, there is a man 30 miles from me in Coventry, just 30 miles. Right? I forget his name now, but you'll know who I'm talking to when I mention him. He's about 30 miles from me, and he's Syrian. Okay, and he was sent to prison in Syria 3 times, I think it was, for fraud. I know it was twice. I think the 3rd time he was facing a prison sentence in Syria. I believe it was for fraud, and he fled. He came to the United Kingdom. You know what the United Kingdom did after they gave him asylum? They gave him £200,000 for equipment, okay? Set him up a phone in his office in Coventry, 30 miles from me, gave him £200,000, and then got lots of people around in Syria that they were contacts with to call him and to tell him all about the human rights abuses that Assad is doing on his own people in Syria. These are people that he's never met, but the government have set it up for him. Then they call him the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Some geezer in Coventry, they call him the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. And then the media entire, the Guardian, the Telegraph, the Independent, a lot of them, all quote this Syrian Observatory for Human Rights as if it is fact in their stories, in their bullshit about Assad and the Syrian war, which, let's face it, we are funding terrorists and arming them. Just go and look at Operation Timber Sycamore, for Christ's sake. I'm not gaslighting you here. I'm telling you the truth. Our media are bullshitting you, and I've just fucking proved it.
And you're flat out right. You are 100% right about that. And the innocuous sounding NGO, or the organization that passes as humanitarian, which is in fact a cutout for MI5, CIA.
It's the equivalent, Steve, it's the equivalent of calling me, I don't know, the Venezuelan telescope for diplomatic sanctions, or whatever they're called, and then giving me £200,000, and then getting a load of people that I'd never met in Venezuela to ring me up and tell me all of the diplomatic and all of the democratic abuses that Maduro is doing on his own people, the people I've never met, giving me 200 grand and then calling me some amazing title and then having the media quote me entire as if I'm some sort of massive humanitarian outfit in Venezuela that is on the fight for democracy. The same with the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. It's a geezer in fucking Coventry, for Christ's sake. And they quote it as if it's fact and then point the finger at me and say, we've got to squash him. We've got to stop him talking because he's fake news. Honestly, the gaslighting is incredible. You mentioned 1984. Do you need any more proof?
We are at the point here to where, and I said this on the vigil last night, in independent media, we not only have to combat the rewriting of recent history and ancient history, but we have to combat the rewriting of real time, Gordon. We're in real time. Bullshit is disseminated en masse to hundreds of millions of people, and it is pure fabrication, and 10 seconds of fact checking on your part reveals that it's pure fabrication. But most people don't have that 10 seconds. They're rushing to their second job, they're rushing to go, pick up a kid, they're rushing anywhere but to a center of information that is going to provide them that information honestly and accurately. And so they're reliant upon these sources that fuck, I think it's CNN has a show called Reliable Sources, and it's a couple of bullshit artists who are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to fucking tell lies to the American public, and the show is called Reliable. So we live in the fucking upside down. They say all the time we live in a cartoon, and it bears out when you've got a president in the WWE Hall of Fame who came in on the heels of a president who won the Nobel Peace Prize and proceeded to start 5 new illegal wars on top of that.
Yeah, Jimmy Dore says a joke, doesn't he? That's the thing about those Nobel Peace Prize winners. They never try to get another one.
I think now that we're about a decade removed from Obama winning that Peace Prize, I think the Nobel Committee could come forward and say, in hindsight, we may have given this out a little early.
Now, they'd have to do it. They'd have to take Kissinger's away as well. It really is a joke. And I was talking to somebody this morning who I was talking about, it was on Twitter, and I said something about Julian Assange. They replied to me. It was about this Laura Kunsberg thing over here. I don't know whether you've noted over there. There's a big campaign seemingly this week to get the BBC's political editor sacked because she outed somebody as a Labour activist when he was confronting Boris Johnson over the state of the NHS. And there was a big thing here. Everybody was all sack Laura Kunsberg, sack her, because they said that she was being impartial. It was trending on Twitter for 2 days, Steve. For 2 days, it was trending on Twitter, them trying to get Laura Kunsberg sacked. I just said, what's interesting to me about this is all these supporters who want the truth so much. They're spending all of their time trying to get Laura Kunsberg sacked for being a shit journalist, rather than standing up for Julian Assange, who has had his human rights withdrawn for being arguably the world's best. And the thing is, I said about how they create the narrative here, and I'll stick on Julian Assange, but have you noticed all the bullshit always goes one way?
Yeah.
Points this out with Russiagate. And it's the same with Assange. All the lies that they say, all the retractions, they all go one way. They never make the mistake of introducing Julian Assange as 7 times nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize Award journalist, Julian Assange. Or they never mention Julian Assange won all these awards for journalism. No, they just say Julian Assange and rape in a headline with quotes on it and just try and get the narrative and the people speaking about that. And they go along with it. These people who are saying sack Laura Kunsberg right now, most of them are Labour supporters. Most of them. What tool could you beat Boris Johnson over the head with that will actually be a good thing for Corbyn? What tool could you use to smash him over the head with?
I think I know the answer to
this. He's trying to extradite somebody who is a parody, a paragon for free speech and freedom of speech, something that the right actually promote themselves. The right don't want Julian Assange to be extradited to the United States. They don't want that. So why the hell are Corbyn supporters not using that as a blunt instrument to bash Boris Johnson over the head every single day of the week with? It's actually something that would help Jeremy Corbyn. He's had his hands tied by this. Tied. He knows the narrative that they will spin in the media is incredible. But if people get on the ground, and if 1 million people, for instance, turn up at Belmarsh Prison later next week at the rally outside there, if 1 million people, guess what? All of a sudden, they're going to have to start telling the truth. All of a sudden, you're going to hear Jeremy Corbyn saying, he's the only one who said he won't extradite him. He said we oppose it. He's still talking about the rape shit, but I will put him straight on that if 1 million people get in the streets. That's what it's going to take here. When Julian Assange wrote to me, he didn't say, reach out to Jeremy Corbyn, he'll know what to do. He didn't say, ask Boris Johnson to give me mercy. No. He said, the UK must resist, the UK has no sovereignty, and until he's free, every one of us has to take his place. This is the only way we are going to get things done here. They are not torturing Julian Assange and putting him behind bars in Belmarsh Prison right now because of secrets, just because of secrets that he released. That, by the way, the United States, it proved that they were torturers, that they were murderers, and they lied to cover it up. It proved it. That's just one incident. But they are not just putting him in prison right now for the shit that he's exposed in the past, and there are millions of documents that are all truthful. No, they're putting him in prison right now, and they're silencing him for the shit that he could be exposing right fucking now. In an era where we've got the Extinction Rebellion having one of their key things going, tell the truth. None of them were screaming about Julian Assange when I was there. I was there at the Extinction Rebellion. I was asking them, Julian Assange, who? Didn't know. In a big placard, tell the truth about climate change. Tell the truth, my bullshit. What is going on there if you do not take the one thing, the one person who would really tell the truth about what is going on in the world right now? What is it why is it so toxic about him? What is it that you're scared of? What is it that these people are scared he is going to say?
Well, here's the thing, and if you're Extinction Rebellion, you're afraid that standing up for Julian Assange might encourage other people to look into how you got formed and who's funding your organization. And when it turns out that it's an oil billionaire and a couple other green capitalists who also have connections to the liquid natural gas industry that put up the actual money for Extinction Rebellion, and it's the same group of green capitalists that put up the money for Sunrise Movement and are pushing this Green New Deal here in the US that has end user punishing carbon taxes and a bunch of giveaways to giant corporations and does fuck all about taking care of reducing the amount of US military presence globally. And you start to see that this is a longer term I guess it's a plan for sustainable greed, Gordon, is what's being pushed out of this, and they're using a 16-year-old girl with Asperger's to do it.
Yeah, it's funny you put that. I did just one caveat there. I mentioned the Extinction Rebellion. I went down to London and I interviewed the people, right? The people actually funded me to go down there. They bought the camera equipment. And I will say this about the Extinction Rebellion. The people on the ground down there, they all care. They are wonderful people. They really are. They are activists and they want to do something. What I will say to them is, you know what? If you really, really value the truth, if you really value the truth and you really want the truth to be said right now, campaign for Julian Assange, campaign for his human rights to be restored, campaign for his access to lawyers, campaign for habeas corpus to be actually implemented. You know, if they can take these, I said it on your channel before, if they can take these things away from one person, we don't have them in this country. We just have the illusion of them. That's it. So
I couldn't agree with that.
The second thing, by the way, Steve, I'll say to you there, you mentioned there the 16-year-old girl. I assume it's Greta Thunberg that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I've watched last year and the year before all the Senate hearings on fake news, and all the Senate hearings with Google and Twitter and all this stuff. And they were all about Russiagate and Russian disinformation. Do you remember? And they were using that as the tool to squeeze independent media like me, so our message doesn't get out there. This is what they're doing. And if you think they are not doing the exact same thing with Greta Thunberg right now, then you know what? As George Galloway would say, I've got a bridge to sell you.
Yeah. Well, what they've done with Sunrise Movement and with Greta Thunberg in particular is that they've elevated the persona so that there's a almost a mythology surrounding this person, and it takes away any identity of her own that she may have.
Of course,
So
and not only that, but it's a 16-year-old girl. You can't attack Greta Thunberg. She's a 16-year-old girl. How can you come out against what they're doing in the Senate? Are you attacking this girl? It's a figure. It's a figurehead. Now, I'm sure she's doing things for the right reasons, but the thing is, she's being used. She's being used by a global oligarchy that is using these Senate hearings to, over the next 2 years, they're going to be implementing things to even squeeze even more dissent, because things are about to happen in this world that honestly they are keeping secret. They are running around the world in a desperate grab for resources at the moment. United States are. They're acting like the goddamn mafia, and we're acting like Fredo. Running around, yes sir, no sir, how can we help? We've got our her Queen's Royal Navy at the moment is being used as Donald Trump's fucking overseas Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Acts of piracy on behalf of an ex-game show host, and nobody in the media wants to write this in the headline. I mean, it's an open fucking goal, for Christ's sake, and they're just, where's the ball? I can't see it. Incredible.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. And when I talk about on the show, when I talk about the importance of standing up for Julian Assange and the importance of like drawing a distinction between a 16-year-old girl who is being manipulated by a handful of people for their agenda. When I talk about that, I talk about us losing the veneer of free speech in this country, and I talk about us being squeezed out, as you do so often. DARPA, the defense department's research and development arm, DARPA, has promised that they're going to team up with former heads of intelligence and the Pentagon to eradicate fake news within 4 years. That is the scariest fucking statement. And I can think
who will be the arbiters of that? You can't
DARPA, the Defense Department,
the fucking keys to rewrite history. You cannot give them the keys to the vaults of history and have them rewrite it. Because guess what? Nothing is going to be true. Nothing. Truth does not matter anymore.
If we're going to live in this post-truth world, as we seem to be doing, that's what makes your show so important. That's what makes like real unbought independent media so important, because we're entering an era where cable news is moving over to the internet. In fact, when I am prompted to mention Cenk Uyghur's name, and I try not to, but
me too.
When he says something that is just so out of the scope of reality that I'm forced to comment on it, I refer to him as cable news on the internet guy. Because he comes from that background. Anna comes from a cable background. Jordan Sheridan came from a cable background. Emma Vigeland came from the Hamptons and got inserted into into this organization as like the liaison between the bluest of bloods and a new medium in terms of disseminating propaganda. And we've got to be vigilant, Gordon. We've got to be on it. We've got to be able to call these people out without making it seem like we're jealous of the $20 million that they get or the size of the audience that they bought. Um, and it puts us in a weird little box because we're almost like the court jester at this point. We're standing outside and we're watching and we're observing. Um, and I think we've got to find a way to become more participatory, and you do an excellent job by showing up at rallies, by showing up at these events, by broadcasting parliament uninterrupted. Like that's incredible. That is, I think that YouTube content creators about once a week or twice a week should restream old Unity for J episodes, should read out loud WikiLeaks drops. Here's what happened in the Iraq war logs. Here's the Afghan war diaries. We're going to go through them together. These are what your governments do.
I agree, and it goes back to his letter to me. He said, "Until I am free, you all have to take my place." You know, it's getting the politicians are not going to save us here. They're not. The journalists are not going to suddenly start telling the truth. You know, they're going to continue doing it until the people stop them from doing it. It's as simple as that. It's going to take millions of us to rise up and say, no, you do not get to extradite this man to the United States where they will kill him. They will kill him and loot the videotape. We saw what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. We know that he had some information on some very powerful people. Well, who's got more information than him, I wonder? Who would be available to actually publish more information? He wouldn't keep it secret either. He'd tell everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, man. When you've got someone like Jeffrey Epstein, who was the face of an operation and who was an underboss in this global child sex trafficking organization, when he goes down, everybody focuses their attention on just him as the bad guy. When Julian Assange gets arrested, we get attacked. And it's not just the character of Julian Assange that gets assassinated. Everyone who has stood with him has their character assassinated. Every time one of us goes on air to speak truth about this, there are Twitter trolls or chat trolls who come in and try and disrupt us. If you are talking about Jeffrey Epstein, though, in regular media, you're allowed to have this conversation about whether he died in the cell or whether he was killed in the cell, and what a horrible person he was. But his accomplices, his partners in this, the government, the people that are associated with him.
It's treating you like mushrooms. It's like I said in the video game, treating you like mushrooms, keeping you in the dark, and feeding you on absolute bullshit while they run around the world, do as much damage as possible in your name, and then charge you taxes to do it. And then in our country, with regards to the BBC, steal £154 from every household for the privilege of propagandizing you and lying to you on a daily basis. That's the situation we are in at the moment. And people are more bothered about getting Laura Kuenssberg sacked than freeing the one person who would be able to shed light on just what is going on in the world right now. It's insane. The monetary system, Steve, I've been looking into this, and I've been trying to get a financial guy on my show because I consider myself a pretty intelligent guy. I think if I research something, I can pretty much figure out what's wrong with it within, X amount of hours. There is a saying, if you research something for 40 hours a week for 6 weeks, you pretty much become an expert in your field. And I tell you what, I've done that over the last 18 months with the financial system, the global financial system, more than that for sure. And this is what I can tell. Basically, you've got FDR coming in after the great financial crash in the 20s, and the global financial system, basically, if you've got to look at it like an egg timer. And if you imagine an egg timer there, they put this system in, but it's flawed. the sand running through the egg timer. In the late 70s, it pretty much ran out from what I could see. And there's a graph that you see with production and wages, it goes up and it's almost exactly the same. So enter Margaret Thatcher and enter the actor, the president, what's his name? I've forgotten his name, Reagan. And they pretty much came up with this fantastic idea called neoliberalism. And what they did is they turned the hourglass on its head and did the exact opposite of what they were doing for the 30, 40 years previous. Still flawed, just in the other direction. Now, when the sand eventually ran out, around about 2008, when you had the financial crash, they were in a pickle because they couldn't turn the hourglass over again and do the same thing that they did before. That would be stupid. So what they did is they opened the top of the hourglass, of sand from the banks called quantitative easing, and then poured it all in at the top as fast as they possibly fucking could. The thing is, if you don't block that thing in the middle, which is the corruption, which is the money going to the elite in offshore accounts all around the world and never getting paid tax on it and never going back into the financial system in the economy itself, and instead going to buy back shares and all that sort of bollocks, that is going to cause a massive crash. And that is what we are looking at right now, very soon, because I heard somewhere that negative yielding bonds, the 30-year ones, are now less profitable than the 2-year bonds or the 1-year bonds. Now, that is an indicator that we are going to face a financial crash in the next 18 months.
Oh, absolutely. California, where I live, 22 straight months of declining home prices. I work in construction. I do rebuilds and remodels, and then new construction, all that kind of shit. I spent this week tearing off a deck, and I'm about to frame it in and build on a new one in the next couple of days. And those calls are coming in less and less. And always working in the trades, you can tell when there's a financial crash coming, because one of the first things to go away is new construction. The second thing to go away is people refinancing their house so they can remodel it, or people trying to get that one last improvement done so they can turn around and put their house on the market and sell it before the crash comes completely through. And homeowners in California know, Gordon, they know this is coming. People who are trying to cash out are panicked, and they're like, fuck, if I don't sell my house in the next 6 months, I gotta wait 10 or 15 years, and maybe nobody has any fucking money then. And
let me ask you, Steve, which news organizations do you hear talking about this?
I don't.
I hear RT, I hear independent media talking about it, and that's it. I hear, you know who I hear talking about it? The people who have been right for the last 30 years. That's who I hear. But nobody in the media is. Everybody in the media is, oh, we can't have a no-deal Brexit. It'll ruin the economy. The economy's going to be fucked in the next 18 months. Are you not paying attention? Nobody in our journalism, no journalists in this country are asking these simple fucking questions. None of them. And you have to ask why. Is it because they know they can't ask those questions? Or is it because they've gone through a system in a private educated school that has actually beat them asking those sort of questions out of them? They know if they ask those sort of questions, they will not travel up the ladder. This is how the government manufacture consent. It's not like these journalists are doing this on purpose, not like most of them are anyway, some of them are, but most of them just haven't got a clue. It's the way they were brought up. If you look at journalism in this country and in America, I know it's the same. They come from all different ethnic backgrounds and all different ethnicities. None of them are working class. Not a single one of them has actually got a brain in their head that can say, right, question everything. Everything. Instead, what they do is they take information that they've been fed by some spook in the national security state and repeat that as if it's fucking fact. Well, guess what? Those motherfuckers, they've been lying to us for decades. Stop doing it. You are gaslighting and lying to your own people, and history should tell you that that's the fucking truth.
Well, and when you put that to a regular working person, when you ask anyone out on the street, do you trust the government? 99 out of 100 will tell you no. Do you know you're being lied to by your news media? 99 out of 100 will tell you, yes, I do. And then you follow that with, did Russia hack the election? Or is Julian Assange a publisher? And you get the manufactured answers
Of course.
because that's all that's stuck. There's nothing else to for them to cling to in terms of what information they've had that they've made themselves available to. And that's the problem. You have to make yourself available to this information. It's not hard to find.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much effort, but it takes enough effort for you to stop being fed and start looking to go eat, you know?
Yeah, I interviewed Christy Dott for my channel from Unity 4J. She's the
Okay.
Unity 4J spokesperson. I know you know well. I've done a stream with you both, and she said something to me. It was the title of my video. When people know the truth, they're horrified. They're horrified at how this man. When they know the truth, they are absolutely shocked. I think the title was. They are shocked at really what's happened and shocked at just how little facts they know about the case. They just know the fugazi, the smoke-filled coffee house crap that the media fill the air with. That's all they know. They don't know the facts because once they know the facts, they go, oh my God, we have to stand up for this man. That's why we do what we do, to try and get the information out there, to try and get the facts out there. And that's why people like you and I are crushed by an establishment trying to silence and gag us just the way they silenced Julian Assange and gagged him in the Ecuadorian embassy last year, just before the Skripal poisonings, just before the bombing of the trilateral bombing of Syria, from basically what we know of now is extremely dodgy information with regards to these canisters being dropped from a helicopter. The leaked OPCW report basically pours scorn on that to say, do you not believe in science? Look at this shit. You know, all of this happened. All of the sanctions them with Venezuela. What does that tell you? They don't want you to know right now of what they are doing around the world.
And the end result of that, as my friend Sam Tripoli, stand-up comedian and podcast host, says, yeah, he says people would rather be right than do right. And especially when it comes down to Julian Assange.
I have a saying that people would rather answer.
Oh, absolutely. You are not wrong about that at all, man. And when it comes down to Julian Assange or a free press or how our information is disseminated from 3 outlets, AP Europe, and Reuters. And that's your information and my information. It's disseminated down to the 6 companies that own US media, and the 8 or 10 that own British media.
It's honestly, it's like, I think of the national print, it's 4 people own 86% in the national print.
Jesus, yeah. I mean, you're right there. It's when 86 to 95% of all media in the UK and in the US is repeating State Department information from one of the same 3 sources.
Yeah, Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, for instance.
Yes. And then you come along, or I come along, and we go, no, this is bullshit, and here's why. The people who would rather be right than do right will immediately tune us out and mock and deride us and find something to discredit us. And it's never the information, Gordon. It's never the research. It's always that guy smokes pot, or that guy looks funny, or that chick wears too much lipstick, or that chick doesn't wear enough lipstick, or like whatever it is. It's all superficial nonsense.
Well, the thing is, I'm funded by people. I'm funded by, like, I think something like 60 or 70% of my donations come from people who send me like less than $4 a month, right? So the people that are my employers, that's the way I look at it. The people fund me and fund my work and pay my rent and pay my bills and, buy food for my dog. The people do that. Therefore, I'm beholden to the people. So if what I say to the people is, if ever I give you anything that is factually incorrect, hold my feet to the fire and immediately tell me. I spend so much of my time just trying to get facts exactly correct, because I know if I don't, they're going to come down on me for that. I know. So I spend so much of my time, but they don't. And that's the reason why they don't ever attack what I'm saying. They don't ever say, oh, what he's saying is false. They can't. It's not false. It's true. And, they're so, they're all talking about the disinformation at the moment, and it's disinformation in the media. It's their media that is doing the disinformation. I'm correct the record stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I'm correct the record stuff that the media get wrong. I give basically the other side of the story that they don't. There was somebody on actually TYT. I had sorry, I mentioned them on your show, but there's somebody on TYT, a guy from Google, who said that they know for a fact, Google know for a fact that they can take any subject that's 50-50 with people on one side or the other and move it to 75-25 either way, just by changing what that person sees. Just think about that. That is how they are propagandizing and basically leading people down their own little maze like rats in an experiment.
And it's also why Tulsi Gabbard has a $50 million lawsuit against Google, and it's why all 50 states' attorneys general have an antitrust lawsuit going against Google. Google is finally starting to see a little bit of repercussions for the manipulations that they've been getting away with over the years. But my fear on that is that Google will then be broken up, and you will have all these satellite companies now with more access to oligarch funding and oligarch resources with which to further disseminate a false narrative under the umbrella, under the guise of these are multiple outlets reporting this, these are multiple search engines providing these results, this or that, and you'll get a situation like when Peter Thiel left Facebook to go start Palantir. And I think Andrew Smith, that's one of the founders of Google, like when he steps away from Google but remains with Alphabet, the Google's parent company, there's still unlimited amount of companies that he can then go and be a CEO of, or be a chair of, or be on the board of. And the way that we handle antitrust legislation in this country opens the door for so many more violations of financial law that it almost seems counterproductive to do it, because you're then corporatizing so many more spheres of independent media. You break up Google, they're going to go after Minds, they're going to go after Gab, they're going to go after all these other platforms and partner up with them and change the content through that.
You're worried that they're going to break it up and make it worse?
Yeah, absolutely. So
this is why we need transparency, mate. This is why we need people like Julian Assange. This is why we need transparency in the whole process. Because if you've got transparency on the whole process, and there's enough people who can look at that stuff, then wisdom of the crowd, guess what? It works. All you need is to give them raw information that is factually true, and wisdom of the crowd will prevail as to what the right thing to do is. This is why we need transparency in all we do, especially in the way the world is at the moment. Whether people believe in global warming and whether it's man-made or not, and what have you, there's no doubt that we are facing huge problems, not just as nations, but as a species right now. Huge problems. And if we don't know what the truth is, how on earth are we going to be able to rein in those neoconservative minds that actually are in control of certain things right now? How are we going to rein them in from not taking us down a totalitarian path? Because that's the way it's heading. They are being more authoritarian, both in the UK and the US, especially on people who are telling the truth. And this is extremely scary. And it's why all of us, as citizens, not just of our countries, of the planet, need to stand up and say no. Because if you've noticed in the media as well, and I keep going back to it, but in the countries that are doing that and standing up and saying no to neoliberalism, they're not showing that in the media, are they? They're not showing what's going on in France right now. They just want to show you what's going on in Hong Kong. Whilst, the Oslo Freedom Forum and all the CIA and spooks and whatever get their hands in there on the guys over in Hong Kong and tell them what to do and how to react against this authoritarian state. It's a nonsense. It is an absolute nonsense. And they are lying and propagandizing the people. And the people have got to stand up and say no, because otherwise they are going to win. And honestly, I fear for humanity if that's the case.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. I have kids that I need to roust and get to school. And then I have to get my own happy ass to work. Gordon, I so thoroughly enjoy talking to you. And I hope that at some point in the future, I can come on your show and introduce myself to your audience. I think that would be a fun conversation to have as well. Um, I would like for you to please tell my audience, if they're not familiar with you, where they can find you and how they can follow you.
I'm Gordon Dimmack on Twitter and on YouTube, and get me at gordondimmack.com. That's DIMMACK.
And that's awesome. And my name is Steve Poikinen. This has been Slow News Day. If you are a regular viewer of the show and you enjoy the content that I'm putting out, you enjoy the approach, and you don't mind someone who occasionally chain smokes, and you find that you would like to help support the show on the sustainability end, I do have a Patreon. It's new. I'm still learning how to manipulate it, and I'm trying every day to figure out how to make it better. You can go to patreon.com/slownewsday and find me there. I don't have tiered donations. You don't get anything more or less special. I am simply trying to produce a show that helps you guys. Until next time, good luck to us all.
Peace.
And we will find out here momentarily.